You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. This is producer JP here live from the Rightside studios, and we're covering the local, the state, the national, all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, folks, as you can tell already, this is not Phil today. Phil actually got the chance. He got invited to go on the podcast Flyover Conservatives. So if any of y'all know who those folks are, they got a pretty big platform on their end. So he is over recording a podcast with them right now where he's thankful for the opportunity to be on there. So you got a JP show today. But first, in the meantime, it is Thankful Thursday, folks.
You got to be more thankful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
We thank you so much for this bountiful harvest of Domino's, KFC, and always delicious Taco Bell.
Have you said thank you once?
Thank you!
That's right, folks. It is Thankful Thursday. We got a good show for you today. 2:30, after I do my monologue to start the show, Emily Hayes from the Dale Jackson Show up on WVNN will be joining me, and we're going to be talking about news of the day. Congressman Dale Strong will be on at 3 o'clock today. He's going to be discussing his bill that he's got to defund NPR, and he'll also be talking the latest on Space Command coming to Huntsville. I know we got a large listener base in Huntsville, and there's been a lot of questions on our show in the past about what's the update on Space Command coming to Huntsville. Well, Dale Strong will be on at 3 o'clock today to give the latest on that. And in the meantime, folks, I do have a monologue for y'all, but I'd like to say to start off the show, guys, please pray for Florida State. I don't know if you guys have seen the news today, but there was an active shooter situation earlier today at Florida State's campus. Right now, all we know is at least one person is dead, another one is in custody, and right now at least 6 people are receiving treatment from injuries involving the active shooter situation down there at Florida State. So prayers for everybody at Florida State, and hope this situation gets resolved quickly. Well, in the meantime, I said I got a monologue for y'all, so here we go. This Right Side Way monologue is brought to you by attorney Stan McDonald at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee up in Huntsville. Stan McDonald, I will tell y'all more about Stan here in a second. So earlier this week, Phil gave a great monologue on faith and politics, and I couldn't agree more. Faith and politics do go hand in hand, absolutely. And the idea that Christians can just sit out of politics because it's too much, it's too worldly, whatever it may be, God calls us to participate in politics, because what's our alternative? You know, God gave us government. Government is a good thing. And Jesus even told the Pharisees, give to Caesar what is Caesar's. But I'm going to take it a step further, so y'all get the JP twist on this. Let me start by saying this. Like I said, there's a narrative that Christianity is this soft, squishy, sweet religion. And I hate that narrative because it's dead wrong. There's a lot taken out of context as of late. For example, Jesus said in Matthew 5:39, "But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also." This does not mean to be passive. What Jesus is referring to here is when you are being persecuted in his name, not to retaliate. That's very different from going on the offensive against evil when it manifests itself in your nation, your community, etc. The narrative I've seen ever since Trump got reelected from non-Christians, and unfortunately some Christians too for that matter, is that we should just be good old Christians. Don't resist when we see things taking place in our country that are just plain wrong. And I'll elaborate more on this in a bit, but first let me give those folks a bit of a history lesson. Whether you like it or not, this nation, the greatest nation ever on the face of the earth, was built by Christians from the ground up. Christians with a vision and the guts to do something about it. They firmly believed that they were being robbed of their God-given rights by tyrannical government, and they were going to be free or die trying. Folks, my favorite historical figure, besides Jesus, of course, is George Washington. Washington was the ultimate badass. Washington quite literally set the tone, I believe, for America's dominant reign as the greatest nation ever. He had determination, vision, strength, resiliency, and an ironclad will to succeed. He even had to convince the Continental Congress to keep fighting against the British several times. Because let me tell you, the fight for our independence was no easy one. Going up against, at the time, the strongest nation, the strongest military on earth, who had all the resources, all the manpower. It was truly a David versus Goliath story. And to be honest, I didn't quite understand how grim it got at times during the war. They really only told us about the victories during the Revolutionary War in school. I mean, it wasn't until later on in life I realized how truly horrifying it was. Lacking in numbers, surviving the cold, staying healthy, all while fighting the Goliath that was England. For example, the Battle of Long Island is the perfect example of, it wasn't just nothing but winning for the Americans in this war. The Continental Army was coming off of a great victory at Boston, where England had evacuated the city. Morale was high, and the mighty George Washington seemed unbeatable. The British then recouped, reloaded, and returned. Just months later, the Battle of Long Island then took place, and it was a bloodbath. The British, alongside the Hessians, made the Continental Army look like it didn't even belong on the same battlefield as them. Washington, embarrassed and humiliated, had to then reevaluate things. He had to convince his own army and Congress that they could actually win the war. Just months later, with morale at the very bottom and defeat appearing inevitable, Washington launched a surprise attack against the British and crossed the frozen Delaware River on Christmas Day, 1776. The weather was anything but optimal. The river was frozen over, winds were howling, and nothing but cold rain and snow was coming down. Spies actually had already warned the Brits that an attack on Trenton was coming, but they thought surely Washington wasn't crazy enough to attack on Christmas Day with those conditions. He was. The original plan was for 3 boats to cross, but because of the less than optimal conditions, only one did. But no matter. This singular event, I believe, is what set the tone for America. It was the pivotal turning point of the war. When all seemed lost, Washington's bravery led the Continental Army to victory. But it didn't just set the tone for America concerning the war, but for all of history. It also produced one of the most epic portraits ever, with Washington leading the way, the flag waving behind him, as he and his soldiers were about to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. One of my favorite quotes ever came from Washington on this day. With the conditions as I described earlier, you could imagine that this wasn't a great environment for muskets. After crossing the Delaware River, they started to march towards Trenton. General Sullivan sent a courier to Washington to tell him that the weather was wetting his men's gunpowder. Washington then responded, "Tell General Sullivan to use the bayonet. I'm determined to take Trenton." What an amazing quote that is. But Washington wasn't just an amazing warrior and leader. He was also a Christian man of God through and through. I think my favorite portrait ever is the prayer at Valley Forge. At one of the lowest points of the war, where all seemed lost, Washington, next to his horse, with his sword by his side, knelt and prayed for his men. One of the only accounts we have of this prayer was by a reverend named Nathaniel Snowden, who wrote this in his diary. "In that woods, pointing to a close-in view, I heard a plaintive sound as of a man at prayer. I tied my horse to a sapling and went quietly into the woods, and to my astonishment, I saw the great George Washington on his knees alone, with his sword on one side and his cocked hat on the other. He was at a prayer to the God of the armies, beseeching to interpose with his divine aid, as it was a crisis in the cause of the country, of humanity, and of the world. Such a prayer I'd never heard from the lips of man. I left him alone praying. I went home and told my wife, I saw a sight and heard today what I never saw or heard before, and just related to her what I had seen and heard and observed. We never thought a man could be a soldier and a Christian, but if there is one in this world, it is Washington." If you couldn't tell already, I'm a bit of a George Washington nerd, but there's a reason for that. In my opinion, George Washington was the greatest man America's ever seen. A man of God who was also a cold-blooded soldier, who had guts, who persevered through the toughest environment and led America to its first victory, and on its way to being what it is today. We need Christians like Washington today, leading the charge to fight the evils of the world and defend America from them. Washington wasn't a lovey-dovey, soft and squishy Christian. He wasn't a passive, laid-back Christian. He was a rebel. He was a Christian who, by the grace of God, led an army to defeat the Goliath Britain, because he believed in his heart he and his men deserved the God-given unalienable rights that they were being robbed of. The left wants to gaslight you into believing, quote, good Christians just sit back and let evil win. Turn the other cheek. No, not at all. Do y'all remember that Episcopal Bishop Marion Bud, however you say her name, who from the pulpit chastised Trump for wanting to deport illegal aliens? What a disgrace that was. But it's a message being tossed from the left and the right, for that matter, about, quote, do unto the least of my brethren, and, quote, clothing the naked. These are all true. But don't you dare gaslight us. That does not mean we should be letting in terrorists who want to do nothing but inflict harm on Americans. You know, Jerusalem had a wall, and punishments from God when Israel strayed away were sieges where the wall was demolished. Security is a necessity for any self-respecting country. And I'm tired of non-Christians and unaware Christians taking the Bible out of context to turn Christianity into a convenient non-threat. It's a heresy. Meanwhile, the left is also trying to turn MS-13 and Tren de Aragua members into poster boys. They're just good people wanting a second chance at life. No, they're not. They're evil terrorists who want to do nothing but seek, kill, and destroy. And they have no place in America, period. President Bukele, president of El Salvador, has the blueprint for this. He was just in the White House earlier this week, and he's helping Trump get rid of these terrorists. He turned his nation, El Salvador, from the murder capital of the world into one of the safest. How? Throwing criminals in jail. It's really that simple. But if you watch his interview with Tucker Carlson from around a year ago, he discussed the satanic worship from these MS-13 and Tren de Aragua gangs. They're pure evil. Don't let that be forgotten while we're getting these disgusting people out of our nation. They have no good intentions while being here. So I say all that to say this. Christians, which I know a ton of y'all who listen to the show every day, I myself am a born-again Christian, we cannot let our religion be twisted for convenience. It's not convenient for Christians to want a better, safer nation. It's not convenient for Christians to be empowered. It's not convenient for Christians to lead the charge to protect America. Then it becomes much harder for evil to win. We are called to fight evil, not tolerate it. But we can't do it all ourselves. We must pray for our nation. We must pray for President Trump and his administration as they're doing a worthy and very difficult job of trying to bring America back. Because after 4 years of wide open borders and people at the wheel who did not believe and welcome God into that White House, it's going to take a lot of work. However, they've been doing a great job so far, and we can't let deception creep in. Christianity is not a passive religion. It is one of action. Be like Washington. Be like Jesus. Don't tolerate evil. You fight it every single day. And you put on the armor of God every day as well, because you'll need it. And that is a wrap for the Right Side Way. Yeah, folks, it drives me up a wall, quite frankly. The amount of people who are gaslighting Christians and telling them, just turn the other cheek. What's the big deal, man? Why are you fighting to get these evil people out of our nation? That's not a Christian way to go about things. It's not true. And it's a heresy, like I said. And it's time for Christians to stand up and speak up and do something about it. This is JP here, and we're going to take a break. Be back on the other side. Stay tuned. And we are back. This is producer JP here filling in for Phil while he is over on the Flyover Conservatives podcast. Recording a podcast with them. But in the meantime, y'all have a JP show today. I told y'all that monologue was brought to you by attorney Stan McDonald, partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee. He's a 30-year veteran in the practice of law in North Alabama. Not only will Stan advocate and fight for your legal needs and rights, but he has been an absolute warrior for causes near and dear to our Rightside ruffian community. Attorney Stan McDonald has represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions over the years, and Stan McDonald knows how to represent you in court in front of the federal, state, and local decision makers. When Stan McDonald is on your side, you'll have no greater friend, and likewise, your adversary will have no greater foe. So Attorney Stan McDonald, law firm of Wilmer and Lear, here's his phone number, 256-479-3020. That's 256-479-3020. And tell me her about it on Rightside Radio. And here's my turn to do the stupid lawyer thing again. No representation made is quality legal service performed. It's greater than quality legal service performed by other lawyers. Wow, that is hard, man. You know, I Phil's been getting good at it lately, but man, that takes some time to get used to, folks. I think John was right last time. I don't think I took a big enough breath right there either. Maybe next fill-in show. We had some text line open up, 833-687-4448. Let us know your thoughts. David Abucky's texting in, greetings from the National Naval Aviation Museum at Pensacola, NAS. Our daughter and her husband are visiting from Ridgecrest, California, home of the China Lake NAS. Well, you'll be happy to know that they will be taking the new shirts back to California with them. Man, David, appreciate you welcoming in some new Rightside ruffians. Hope they enjoyed that merch. TL from Huntsville also texted in. Great monologue, JP. Appreciate it. As you said, prayers for Florida State. Yes, prayers for Florida State. George Washington has a well-known statement of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. A man of great leadership, a strong warrior, but also a man of honorable civility. Yeah, man, I'm a massive George Washington fan. Going to Mount Vernon is at the top of my list of places I want to go to right now. He was a heck of a man, George Washington was. John from Huntsville texting in, JP, that was a spectacular monologue. Appreciate you, John. He said, also, did you hear Lee Corso is retiring from College Game Day? I did. It's about time. It's about time for Lee Corso probably to hang it up. It is an end of an era, though. He said, hey, does that mean that Nick Saban now gets to put the mascot head on to predict what team is going to win? By the way, I'm looking forward to hearing Emily Hayes as well. I don't think Nick Saban, I don't think that's up his alley to be the mascot head guy. That's just me, though. I think McAfee would be more for the mascot head. If they keep that tradition going, I feel like he can't, though. That tradition's got to go with Lee Corso. That was his thing. He made it what it was. You got to retire the mascot head along with Lee Corso when he retires. So maybe they'll find something new, but you can't have anybody else do the mascot head, man. Jeff from Indiana says, JP, Uncle Phil needs to give you a raise. I appreciate that, man. He said, because you can do Phil's part. Your part still can't get enough sound effects to get a triple plus from John from Huntsville. He said, haha, keep up the good work. You're amazing for your age. I appreciate that. Appreciate that, Jeff Rowe. And then we got Shorty from Anderson, Alabama. He said, hey, JP, did a pretty good job on that disclosure. Like my dad always used to tell me, practice, practice, practice makes perfect. One day you'll get it down better than Phil. Nah, I don't know. But the thing that Phil's got is Phil is a lawyer, because that thing was made because, lawyers got involved. So he's a lawyer. So that his own people made that, came up with that thing. So I think that maybe gives him an advantage. I think he's just him being a lawyer. He's built to do that better than me. But we'll see. I'm going to see what John from Huntsville's grade is for my lawyer disclosure there. But like I said, folks, Emily Hayes will be joining me here at the 2:30 mark. She's going to help talk news of the day with me, and then y'all stay tuned. 3 o'clock, Congressman Dale Strong will be coming on. I don't know if y'all noticed, Dale Strong actually introduced a bill back in February. It was called the Defund NPR. Hold on, let me pull up the actual name here real quick. It was, let me see, the No More Funding for NPR Act of 2025. So that was back in February. And Donald Trump actually put out a memo earlier this week directing the Congress to cut $1.1 billion to the CPB, which runs NPR and PBS. So it looks like Congressman Strong's bill is actually going to get across the finish line here, and he'll be working directly with the Trump administration to help get rid of the funding from NPR, because as y'all know, folks, NPR has just become a mouthpiece of the left. It's an indoctrination program, truly, and unfortunately it's on our kids too and what they watch. So I'm all for that, but then also, folks, like I said, he's going to be talking about Space Command coming to Huntsville. it's been long overdue, folks. Long overdue for Space Command to come to its rightful home here in Huntsville, Alabama. So y'all stay tuned at 3 o'clock as well for Congressman Dale Strong. But in the meantime, we're going to take a quick time out, and we'll be back on the other side. This is JP filling in for Phil here on Rightside Radio. We'll be right back.
Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right.
And we are back. This is producer JP here, filling in for Phil on Rightside Radio, where it's always solid conservative and just plain right. Yeah, folks, Phil is actually off. He got invited to record a podcast with the Flyover Conservative. So if any of you guys out there are Flyover Conservative fans, keep a lookout for an episode with Phil Williams coming up on there. But that is where he's at right now. In the meantime, y'all get a JP and Emily Hayes fill-in show for today. But real quick, look, it's Emily Hayes right there. How are you doing, Emily?
I'm well, JP. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. It's been a long time no see.
I know this is this distance. It's a little too much, my friend.
Yeah, it's how has Dale been treating you up on WVNN?
Well, listen, we've been a little more bickering than normal.
Bickering?
Kelsey has been producing for us, and he said it feels like Grandma and Grandpa are fighting. And then I was slightly offended because why put me in that age bracket just now? You know, I'm only 40.
Yeah.
But he said, we just, it's good stuff though. It's all in good fun. It's all in good jest. We're having a lot of fun on the morning show. Of course we miss you, but you know, I know you've been a great asset to Phil, and the Rightside Ruffians are happy to have you for certain.
Man, do you and Dale need to go like to therapy or something together? Like,
wouldn't that be
therapy?
something?
Maybe we should do that on air.
Yappy had to drive us around in Montgomery after a Yellowhammer event, and I lived in Montgomery for about 4 years. I was trying to give him the right and appropriate directions. And Dale, you know how he feels about women and opinions and knowing things.
Yeah.
Kept talking over me, and poor Yaffy was so confused on what to do, and I am obviously in the back seat because I'm a woman, and then I just have to hear Dale talk over me, and we're taking the wrong turns. I'm like, I told you if we would have turned on Dexter, we would have been there by now. I think Yaffy was traumatized from that event. So whenever the bickering starts, he just goes back to being stuck in the car with us. And if everybody could just say a prayer for Yaffy.
Like mom and dad arguing in the car or something.
Mom and dad are fighting.
I guess Dale would rather be late to an event than have a woman give directions, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know that you're wrong there.
Yeah.
I don't know that you're wrong.
Yeah. By the way, folks, 833-687-4448 is the text line number. Let us know your thoughts. I had a couple more texts come in. So John from Huntsville texted in, said, JP, your lawyer bait gets a 7.8 for me. That's better than I expected. 7.8 is pretty good. Appreciate that, John. Also, Chris from Starrett, Alabama says, JP, great monologue. Thank you. For those who say Christians need to be more like Jesus, need to read Revelation. He is not a lolly Jesus, meek and mild. He is the Lion of the tribe of Judah. That's my Jesus. Amen, man. And, you know, everybody brings up the example of Jesus flipping tables in the temple. Yeah, I mean, and that's a great example. But, I mean, read Revelation then. See, Jesus is coming back with not to be, you know, soft and squishy Jesus. He's coming back, you know, with justice on his mind. So I agree 100%. And I'm tired of people, you know, trying to use our religion against us, against, you know, deportating, you know, illegal aliens who are MS-13 members and trying to claim that's unchristian-like, and it drives me up a wall.
The Bible's not a buffet. You can't pick and choose what you like and what you're going to do more of and what you're just going to pass because it doesn't suit you or suit your lifestyle or suit your sensibilities. It's not an optional thing. And I firmly believe this. As Christians, we have a responsibility to be knowledgeable about what we confess. And that means staying in the Word. That means doing the work, knowing, you know, it's not just knowing your Bible inside and out, but there's so much in that book. If you could spend just a full year going over the maps of every place that's laid out in the Bible so you can better understand these journeys that they went on and the feeding of the 5,000 and stuff like that, where they were all gathered. There's so much to learn. You never stop learning. And I fully, truly believe if you are going to proclaim that you're a Christian, you got to be able to defend it 100%. And the best way to do that is to never stop learning.
Yeah, 100%. And I've seen so many people saying, what about the quote, like the least of my brethren? What Jesus is going to take account for y'all supporting Trump getting rid of these people, and talking about the latest guy was a Borrego Garcia, the MS-13 member, and it's
you mean the Maryland father?
Oh, the Maryland
We're all
father.
just supposed to
Yes,
say the Maryland father.
Yes, excuse me, the Maryland father that also beat his wife. Yes, that one.
Yeah.
It's about time Christians say something about it, and it's because it's too many passive Christians, are just letting our religion being twisted into something that it's not for their own convenience. These are non-Christians twisting it to something for their convenience and for their own narrative, and it's a heresy. It's blasphemy. It drives me up a wall every time I see somebody say something about it. By the way, Chris from Athens texted in. It says, "JP, great monologue. Appreciate it." He said, "I'm hating on Emily for complaining. Once a Karen, always a Karen. LOL. Dale Jackson for governor." Wow, there's a lot in that.
Listen, somebody texted in the other day, JP, and said, "I'm just going to stop using the word Karen and just say Emily instead." And I said to myself, "Self, what have you done?"
That is, what did you do?
I don't know. I never thought of myself as much of a complainer, and you know that I hated eight, and that's where I always have to complain, and my hates suck, and so they just
your hates were always weak because you couldn't find anything to hate on. Yes.
Yeah, I'm not. A long time ago, I started intentionally looking for the blessings in situations, good and bad. It was Lent like 10 years ago, and I said, I could give something up or I could add something in. And so what I added in for Lent was looking for the blessing in everything. Even when it seems like it's the worst thing, there's a blessing in it. And just doing that 10 years ago, my worldview, my perspective on things happening in my life changed so much. So when I joined Dale's show on WVNN, a year or so ago, it's like, all right, we got this segment at 8:00. It's called Hate at 8. You got to hate on something. What?
Every day.
What am I gonna hate on? I hated on finding a paper cut that you didn't know you had until you were using hand sanitizer.
That's
yesterday.
a good one. That's a good one, actually.
But people hate my hates.
Yeah. Well, today is actually Thankful Thursday on Rightside Radio.
Perfect.
Well, it was Turbo Thursday. That didn't really catch on. So then we had a period where it was Friday Eve, and then we had somebody say T-Bone Thursday, but people didn't like my T-Bone Thursday sound effect. So now we've landed on Thankful Thursday, and that seems to be widely accepted and appreciated. So from here on out, it is Thankful Thursday here on Rightside. So it's not Hateful Thursday. It is Thankful Thursday.
I love it.
But I remember my grandmother, bless her heart, she was like, when I was producing for Dale's show, she was like, "You should tell Dale that you should have a grateful at 8 instead of a hateful at 8." And I was like, I don't think Dale would like a grateful at 8.
JP, after you left, we tried that because Dale was out for a couple of days and Yappy was filling in with me, and we tried it, and Bugsy made this very beautiful music that you would hear upon entering heaven bumper, and we did great at 8, and it was really split with the audience. Some loved it, some hated it, some had some really nasty opinions, but we tried great at 8, and then we made a rule that whenever it was just me and Yaffy covering for Dale, that we would do great at 8, and boy did that get squashed pretty hard. So I'm glad that you guys have Thankful Thursday.
Yes, I think our listeners appreciate thankfulness, I guess, more than Dale's listeners. Let's see. Tom with all the kids texted in and said he's thankful for Emily being on the show.
That's sweet.
We also have David from Cortland, Alabama. Said, "Wow, JP, great right side way monologue. Appreciate you." He said, "Phil needs to keep on his toes. You're giving him a run for his money."
Oh, good.
Appreciate that, and I'll let him know you said that. John from Huntsville texted in again and said, "Emily, you should have been the judge to the Willie Nelson singing contest because I know you would have given the win to Jeff from Indiana and not let Dale overrule you."
Let me tell you, that was really tough. We had 3 guys call in and sing, and Kelsey sang too. You should go back and listen to the podcast for that, JP. But we had 3 guys call in. I believe it was Mike and Jeff. And then there was a third. Mike was first, then it was Jeff, and then it was a third. When Mike sang, I was like, dang, that's pretty good. And then when Jeff sang, I was like, dang, That's pretty good. And I was going either way. Personally, I was leaning just a smidge more towards Mike, but it wasn't my call. It was Jeff Poor's call. And you know how much he loves contests like that. But no, I was pleased with the selection of Jeff because I thought he had done a really good job. And then, Dale did his, aha, it's really Mike. And it was like, well, okay, Mike sang really well too. I'm kind of glad I was left out of that because it's become what I like to call Willygate.
Willygate.
It'll be our downfall, JP.
Oh my gosh, Willygate. Well, Jeff called into our show yesterday and was hating on Dale for that. So, and then Jeff had to talk about it once again. And Dale brought up, Jeff's had to talk about that shtick twice that day. So that was definitely driving him up the wall. You know how much Jeff loves it.
Jeff is a very serious man and does not enjoy silly radio fun.
Nope.
And man, you could hear it in his voice. He was just very not pleased. Yeah. How that friendship survives beats me.
It beats me too, actually. Let's see. We have Dana from Athens says, Emily, you can hate on Hate at 8. I feel like you've done that a couple of times.
I have.
We also have Roughly Ann from Huntsville says, she sent a picture of a paper cut and said, I just found this immediately after Emily mentioned paper cut.
Oh, no!
We got people discovering paper cuts while Emily is talking about discovering paper clips. Look at that.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, folks, we're going to take a quick break here in a second, but before we do that, I wanted to mention again to please pray for the folks down at Florida State. We had an active shooter situation earlier today down at Florida State. From what I'm seeing right now, all we know is at least one person is dead. A person is in custody also, and it says that at least 6 people are receiving treatment for injuries from the shooting. So just please pray for folks down in Florida State today, and pray for the families who are also affected by that, and pray that the situation resolves itself and everybody gets safe. Thankfully, I think I've seen a lot of stories of cops being there quickly. And folks being able to get to a safe spot pretty quickly as well. So, but please just pray for everybody that's injured and all the families affected by that as well. But we're going to take a quick time out. We're going to come back on the other side and preview what we're going to be talking about with Dale Strong at 3 o'clock, his bill to defund NPR, and also Space Command possibly finally coming to Huntsville. It's about time for that announcement, stay tuned for that. This is JP and Emily filling in for Phil here on Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. This is JP here, filling in for Phil on Rightside Radio, where it's always solid, conservative, and just plain right. I'm here with Emily Hayes from the Dale Jackson Show from 5 to 9 a.m. up on WVNN out of Huntsville. And we're going to be joined by Congressman Strong here at the top of the hour. But before we're joined by him, I'd like to lay the groundwork a little bit for something he's been working on. So back in February, Congressman Strong filed the, quote, No More Funding for NPR Act of 2025, which we've talked about it several times on this show about NPR and how it has gone extremely far to the left. But not just NPR, but also, PBS. Sesame Street has been turned gay. I feel like everything has been turned gay from PBS. And most of y'all, I remember we talked about this, we're sending in some of y'all's favorite cartoons on, PBS. And it's a shame that PBS has, and NPR for that matter, have been turned into such a political and partisan organizations. And when you have kids who are watching, these PBS shows, and it's filled with indoctrination and, Bert and Ernie being gay, apparently, which, by the way, I grew up on Bert and Ernie, and I don't remember them being gay one bit. I feel like if they were, I would have known that as a kid. They would have let me in on that growing up. I don't think Bert and Ernie are actually gay, but they made them gay, and now kids are having to watch that stuff, and it's a shame. And so Russ Vought, Director Vought from the Trump administration, put out a memo to Congress to cut $1.1 billion from the CPB, which is what runs NPR and PBS. And Dale Strong put out a tweet saying he looks forward to working with the Trump administration on this bill of his, hopefully get it across the finish line and get it signed into law so we can cut that funding. But it's crazy, folks. And we're going to be talking with Dale Strong about this, like I said. But we gotta find a way how to get PBS back to not being radically left, but how about just keep politics out of it in general? Like, I don't understand when kids are watching, your cartoons, why you have to have any sort of political bias in there at all.
I mean, you don't unless you're trying to push some kind of agenda on impressionable youth. I mean, isn't that? That's what it is. Mm-hmm. It kills me. Like, I hate to think of no PBS and no NPR. And before everybody jumps all over me for that, I just want to say, I miss the PBS of when I was a kid. I watched Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, the Reading Rainbow. These were all really great programs. When my kids' sisters were growing up, they were big fans of Arthur and Bill Nye the Science Guy. There were some really great programs on there that weren't corrupted or used as a vehicle to push some side's agenda. Either way on this, Republican, Democrat, whatever your beliefs, conservative, liberal, independent, whatever, let's leave it out of children's broadcasting. Why not?
Yeah, I mean,
why does it have to be there? And then there's some really great stuff from PBS. There's some really great, they have digital channel offerings where they have just, cooking shows, and then they have great documentaries and things like that. Those things are good, but when you are just out and out so obvious with where your belief structure lies and what you're pushing, you're gonna turn people off. And they should have realized it sooner rather than later that they were making some pretty strong enemies.
Yeah, and like you said, I mean, not just from the left, but I feel like either side of the aisle. Like, why do we have politics in those kids' shows at all? And I don't want to get rid of PBS altogether. Like you said, I'd like to see it be made better and go back to what it used to be. But Congressman Strong will also be talking about here in just a couple minutes, Space Command coming to Huntsville. And it's been, ever since Trump has gotten reelected, and rightfully so, the talk of, people in Huntsville who are Republicans have been, waiting for Trump to bring Space Command back to Huntsville. He mentioned he would promise he'd do that. And Mike Rogers, he claimed that we could be days away from an announcement. He said down at a panel at Auburn that we could be seeing, before April's even over, an announcement that Space Command is coming to Huntsville. And it was put in Colorado completely politically motivated, trying to punish Alabama. Their argument was it was because of Alabama's abortion laws. So that was like an act of punishing Alabama to bring it to Colorado, even though Colorado Springs is like one of the most Republican cities in America. But anyways, they took it to Colorado instead. And I didn't know this. Apparently, the Pentagon would have saved $426 million if they had decided to go to Alabama instead of Colorado. So it was a completely boneheaded move. Colorado Springs wasn't even on the top 3 list of best places for it to be in the first place. So it was just a 100% politically motivated move to do that. So hopefully Trump can soon bring it to its rightful home here in the Rocket City of Alabama. So I look forward to talking to Congressman Strong about that here at the top of the hour. Shane from Athens texted in, said it's hard to believe that there are those out there that don't believe that they are coming for our children. They're going after them younger and younger. Yep. And you can see what they're wanting to push in schools, but also what they're wanting to put on PBS as well. I agree 100%. Fritzy from Huntsville said, JP, great monologue. Appreciate it. He said, oh, Miss Emily is on a show where she is respected. Nice job. Yeah, you know.
Oh, bless it.
Yeah. Maybe she can become the third Right Side host. Who knows?
Oh, you guys. They'll get into the turf war.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, we're going to take a quick timeout here. We'll be joined on the other side by Congressman Strong. Like I said, 833-687-4448 is the text line number. Let us know y'all's thoughts throughout the show. We'd greatly appreciate that. But we're going to take a quick timeout, like I said. This is JP and Emily Hayes filling in for Phil here on Right Side Radio. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. This is JP here live from the Rightside studios, filling in for Phil Williams today. And we're here on Rightside Radio, where it's always solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, folks, we are glad to be joined here from Congressman Dale Strong. He is the representative of District 5 of Alabama up in D.C., and we'll be discussing his NPR bill here in a momentarily, and then also, what about Space Command coming to Huntsville? I feel like it's about time for that. But here, let's not waste any time. Let's bring the Congressman on. Congressman Dale Strong, I appreciate you coming on the show.
JP, it's great to be with you again.
Well, Congressman, back in February of earlier this year, you brought up this bill, the No More Funding for NPR Act of 2025. And then earlier this week, Director Vaught drafted a memo directing lawmakers to cut $1.1 billion from the CPB. Talk to us about this. I know you put out a post that you're looking forward to working with the Trump administration on this. Talk to us about how this bill of yours is going to get across the finish line.
Well, if the American people knew how their money was being spent, they would be very upset. Some do, a lot don't. You start talking about, you look at what you have done and Phil Williams has done on this radio show, you've got to have sponsors to be sure that this show keeps going. Well, what NPR is doing is they're fleecing the American people for more than $600 million. And, I sit here and take the people of North Alabama. I want to do what they want to do, but I'll tell you this right here. I've yet to see anybody that wants to spend $600 million to keep NPR spewing their Democratic garb all over America. So we're sitting here, and I'm pretty proud where I am, and I was excited to see the president this week or last week jump on and say we need to stop, Congress needs to stop funding NPR. I'm right along with him, and that's why I sponsored that bill in February.
And you mentioned, us here at Rightside. I think we'd be okay with just a quarter of, that funding. I think we'd appreciate that as well, and we wouldn't be spewing the nonsense that NPR is spewing for sure. But I grew up watching Sesame Street. I was a big Bert and Ernie kid, and then I find out later, apparently Bert and Ernie are gay, and it's like, why do they have to be gay? Why do they have to put any political bias into kids' TV shows? It's just asinine to me. But what do you say to people who argue that, well, if you want to make NPR and PBS better, then shouldn't you fund it even more? What do you say to people who are arguing that they should get more funding if you want to fix it, not cut funding?
Well, I'll tell you this right here. What I want to do is to put that money back in the people's pocket, and if they want to send it to NPR or to Sesame Street, have at it. But I don't believe that government, I don't think it's our role to pick winners and losers, especially in radio, and this abuse has gone on for years. I'm just glad that we're finally getting to the point that people are seeing how their tax dollars are being spent. You start looking at it, JP, there's a lot of other expenses out there, $22 billion for Health and Human Services to provide free housing and cars for illegal aliens, $45 million for diversity, equity, and inclusion for scholarships in Burma. You know what? Is that not unbelievable? If the American people had to personally write this check to this garbage, there's no way that it would ever happen. $8 million to promote LGBTQ plus for African countries. You talk about $10 million for male circumcisions in Mozambique, and then, of course, the $20 million for Sesame Street to be broadcast. I think we have a lot of pressing issues. We ought to be paying down the national debt. This is a threat to America, and I think that President Trump is pushing this in the right direction.
Yeah, thank God for Elon Musk and Doge for bringing this to the forefront, because all this stuff has been happening behind the scenes without any of our knowledge, and we're the ones, funding that nonsense. But real quick, one last question regarding NPR. Obviously, you can't speak for NPR or PBS and what they're going to do, but I get a sense that that budget cut, if it were to come to fruition, would be a reality check to them, and hopefully they could, come back to the center. We're seeing a bunch of, corporations cutting DEI and cutting all that nonsense and coming back to, the center on things. I would think that NPR and PBS, that would be a wake-up call for them to do that. I certainly hope so. What are your thoughts on that?
I think you'd see some layoffs immediately, and I think the free enterprise would be better off because of it. But you look at, if you've ever listened to it, man, you talk about, well, it might be leaning. No, it's not. It's they're not reporting the news. They're creating and making their own stories and then trying people to follow it. And then the $600 million associated with it, then all of a sudden they have other people that, buy their, their productions. So it's more involved than just $600 million. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But, that list goes on. We're sitting here right now. I think we made about $2.2 billion in beef purchases from Australia. They didn't buy a dime from America. And so that's the thing. Fraud, theft, and abuse is wide open. The Biden administration pushed it even to another extreme. And that's you look at these protesters out there. It's going on all over the country. Soros's agitators, they're out there just upset because they have been exposed. They find out, well, Biden was asleep at the switch. Man, he was totally unconscious. He wasn't just asleep at the switch. He was unconscious at the switch.
Yeah, 100%. And you've seen it yourself, Indivisible demanding that you show up to their events, telling you when, you're going to show up to their events. I mean, it's just, it's nonsense. But I think the protests and how they're acting just shows how much little they have. And they're getting demolished and everything in the political realm right now, I think. And all they can do is grandstand and whine and complain. So I personally see it as a sign of winning. But Congressman, let me ask you about this too. Space Command has been a big story, especially for folks in Huntsville. Ever since Trump got reelected, they've been eagerly waiting to see if Space Command will come to its rightful home in Huntsville, Alabama. Mike Rogers, representative of Alabama as well, claimed that we could be days away from an announcement. He said, hopefully before April's even over. And we saw Kay Ivey sign a joint resolution encouraging President Trump to immediately proceed, bringing permanent headquarters of Space Command to Huntsville. What are you hearing up there? Are we anywhere close to an announcement of Space Command coming to Huntsville?
Well, I had an opportunity week ago, 10 days ago, to meet with the president and the vice president. And I can tell you this right here, unlike the previous administration, they're going to do what's right for national security. When I first got to Washington, that was one thing that I said, I want to see the evidence. I want to know how this decision's made. I want to know who makes the recommendation. And that's the thing that we found. That 21 categories was evaluated. It showed several areas participated, and then you take some of the notes that were there. It said a close competition between number 1 and number 2, large separation between 2 and 3. And what did Biden recommend? He recommended number 5, Colorado. I want to do what's right for national security. Every indicator shows that Redstone Arsenal is what is right. And so we're going to continue to push this forward, and I trust the decision will be made sooner rather than later. The big thing we need the Senate to seat the Secretary of the Air Force, because that is who should be making the recommendation to the president. And you look at it, that's the one thing that I tip my hat to is Secretary Kendall served under President Trump 45. He also served as Secretary of the Air Force for Biden. And then you go ahead, and his recommendation was clear. He recommended Redstone Arsenal because it was right for national security. And then you look at what Biden did. He goes and does Colorado to try to get votes for the Democratic Party. I promise you, if we start doing this country's in a sad state of affairs. I believe the Secretary of the Air Force will be seated, and I think that he'll review the categories, the evaluation. But the way I look at it, we're 4 years behind schedule in a couple of months. We're ready to go vertical. I believe the president will get his recommendation. I think he will move immediately, and I personally believe the Space Command is coming to Redstone Arsenal. 1,700 jobs with about a 3,000 job spinoff, and I think that we've got the right people at the right place at the right time to do the mission.
Hey, man, that's good to hear. And I didn't even realize this, Congressman, that the Pentagon would have saved $426 million if they went to Alabama instead of Colorado in the first place. But, I mean, I think that just shows how big of a politically motivated decision that was to choose Colorado, which, like you said, wasn't even in the top choices. Hopefully this soon can happen.
Yeah, Colorado was always a temporary solution. Mike Rogers has said that multiple times. And then when you start looking at it, they leased a building for $54 million. And that's funny. They failed to tell the American people that it's 9.5 miles outside of the military base in Colorado and has zero force protection. I thoroughly enjoyed questioning General Dickinson when he was before the House Armed Service Committee, and I can promise you he turned a pasty white when we asked him, did it meet the minimal standards? And think about it. If you got a $54 million leased building and it has zero force protection, not even a concrete barrier in front of it, think about the threat that is to the people that work there. I believe the president's fixed to make a decision. I think he understands what's at stake. Nothing against the people of Colorado, but Redstone Arsenal is the preferred choice. It was always a temporary solution in Colorado, and what they were trying to do is during this time, they were trying to go vertical to plug the dike to make it look like that it appealed. It does not threaten readiness. Our United States military is ready to go at any time. And then you look at what the Colorado delegation did, sent letters to President Biden saying to intervene at any expense. Let me tell you something. Let's do what's right for national security, and I'll promise you right now our country will be better because of it.
Well, Congressman, I got one more question for you, then we'll let you go. Major story of the Maryland father of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, let alone the MS-13, gang member. That obviously doesn't matter. But we see, Chris Van Hollen deciding he's going to go down to El Salvador and demand Bukele release him, and it's a complete joke. But I got to ask you, he said that a bunch of his colleagues are coming down with him. There's more congressmen and coming down there to demand his release. I got to ask you, Congressman, do you have any plans in the future to go down to El Salvador and have a meaningless trip at all?
I can tell you this right here. I'll never go to El Salvador. To be honest with you, I liked what their president said. He said they liberated their country by getting rid of the MS-13, and look at it. Their country's a lot better off because of it. But Chris Van Hollen, what he ought to have been doing is trying to see what he can do to release those 5 Americans that are being held hostage in Gaza. That's what we ought to be doing, is trying to get the Americans back. But he's trying to do a publicity stunt. And the Democratic Party knows that they've got one foot on a banana peel, and he's just adding more to their circus. But I'll promise you, this is absolutely a 3-ring circus, and he stepped right in the middle of it. That guy is with MS-13. The data has showed that. He's beat his wife several times. You look at these reports. He's got a list as long as my leg of what he's done illegal since he came to America. And that's the thing. He is an illegal alien in America, and you look at it. We returned him to his home country, and our country's better off today because of it.
Well, Congressman, we're going to leave it there. Appreciate your time and coming on the show, and hopefully we can speak again soon.
Hey, JP, great to be with you.
All right. That was Congressman Dale Strong. We're going to take a quick timeout, and we'll go back on the other side. Emily Hayes here with me. This is JP Rightside Radio, filling in for Phil Williams, and we'll be right back. And we are back. This is JP here filling in for Phil on Rightside Radio, where it's always solid conservative and just plain right. Here with Emily Hayes from the Dale Jackson Show up on WVNN. By the way, folks, Phil today was recording a episode with the Flyover Conservatives, which just wrapped up and apparently went really well. So if you guys out there, any Flyover Conservative fans out there listening, make sure to keep an eye out for Phil. Upcoming episode soon on the Flyover Conservatives. But he will be back tomorrow in the meantime. So we had some texts that came in. 833-687-4448 is the text line number. Let us know your thoughts. Dave from Capshaw texted in. He said, JP, we need to defund NPR completely. He said that 100% of government money, they were created years ago when there were only 3 networks. As Dale said, let them compete in the marketplace. You can give them a donation with your own money if you want certain shows to continue. As for me, I don't want my tax money going to them. Yeah, and I would agree with that. And, you know, I was kind of playing devil's advocate there with Dale Strong, because I've seen that argument from people on the left talking about, well, if you want it to get better, then you need to fund it more. As if funding anything more has made anything better in the past. But I agree. It really should survive on its own in the free market. And at the very least, if they're going to cut the funding, hopefully they get a reality check and say, oh, well, maybe having a political bias on kids' TV shows and on public radio isn't such a good move. Maybe we'll start to go back more to the middle, or just keep politics out of PBS and kids shows altogether. I think that would be a big move, and hopefully, I'm not against funding them if they do that. But if they're not going to, then I agree. Give them a reality check.
For sure. I mean, there were shows that I grew up on. My parents were divorced and are still very much divorced and angry. And when we were kids, my dad lived about 8 hours away from my mom. And so we spent a lot of time in the car, and coming home on Sundays, we would listen to a lot of NPR. Like, we would listen to Car Talk with my dad. We would listen to Wait, Don't Tell Me. And like what I have loved about NPR over the years as a radio person, as a nostalgic radio person, is and it's not so much the same anymore, but like that pure form of radio that they could do. They would play old episodes of The Shadow and do like radio dramas and things like that. They would have Car Talk. They would have the game shows and all those things. And those were very engaging and very fun to listen to. But if you think about it, I'm talking to you about Car Talk. The Click and Clack brothers were not talking about anything going on politically. They were talking about carburetors and stuff like that. That's the kind of programming that I would like to see continue. Same with PBS, like we were talking about with Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Reading Rainbow, and Sesame Street, and Arthur, and things like that. That's great public free programming for children. They have great documentaries and specialty shows and things like that. They've ruined what has been so lovely about it by injecting a very obvious political agenda. And to me, it's very sad. It's very sad.
It is. And, hopefully they can come back, because, we've seen lots of corporations, get rid of some of their like DEI and all of, the stuff that they were participating in after Trump came into office. And I think if NPR and PBS, they lose their funding and they realize, oh, we're gonna have to compete, with the private sector, it's gonna be a problem, because nobody's gonna want to listen to that indoctrination, especially with kids shows. I don't want my kids watching Bert and Ernie if they're gay, allegedly.
Right. I mean, what they've done is they've ruined the goodwill and trust of the public that they go to for funding.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you can't trust them to be biased, if you can't, this country is not 100% left leaning.
Yeah.
And you've alienated a lot of your funding that way.
Well, folks, we're going to take a quick time out. We're going to come back on the other side, keep on reading some of y'all's texts, so keep texting in. And this is JP and Emily Hayes filling in for Phil here on Rightside Radio. We'll be right back.
Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right.
And we are back. This is JP here, filling in for Phil Williams here on Rightside Radio, where it's always solid, conservative, and just plain right. I'm here with Emily Hayes from the Dale Jackson Show, up on 5 to 9 a.m. every single day on WVNN out of Huntsville. 833-687-4448 is the text line number. Y'all let us know your thoughts and join in the discussion. So, Emily, something this has been pissing me off. Let me just say it that way. This story has been pissing me off. So I don't know if you've seen this story with this Carmelo Anthony story. Carmelo Anthony being the teenager who stabbed the kid in the heart at the track event and has been charged with murder. He recently came out on bail, and which, by the way, let me just say, I don't know if you've seen the video of him leaving the courtroom while after being bailed out. He's being treated like a celebrity by his lawyers, because one of his lawyers on social media did a POV walking out with Carmelo Anthony after posting bond, as if this is like a reality TV show and like this kid is being turned into like some sort of celebrity. But the part that is really nuts about this whole thing, there was a GoFundMe for Carmelo Anthony. Why? I don't know why, because apparently Carmelo Anthony stabbed a white kid in the heart, and they thought that it was okay. That Carmelo Anthony is the good guy in the situation, obviously. So I think it raised, $850,000. It's probably gone up since. And what was the money used for? Carmelo Anthony's family is now in a, how much was the house, Emily, did you say? 900-something thousand?
900,000.
900,000.
I think that it's estimated that if they didn't buy it, if they're renting it, that payment's like between $3,500 to $4,000 a month.
And a gated community, by the way, like a nice big house in a gated community. I've also seen, I've seen somebody say they've also bought 3 cars with that money. So let me get this straight. Carmelo Anthony stabs. Excuse me. I'm going to have to find the victim's name to give him justice. Austin Metcalf. So Carmelo Anthony stabs Austin Metcalf, and he gets arrested for murder, rightfully so. And everybody's claiming that Carmelo Anthony is the victim and are willing to send him money and are treating him like a celebrity. And now he gets a big mansion and more cars. Meanwhile, Austin Metcalf's family is mourning the loss of their teenage son, where his twin brother he literally died in his twin brother's arms.
Oh, just awful.
And Carmelo Anthony, the kid who murdered Austin Metcalf, is now getting a mansion and cars and being flaunted like a celebrity.
It just seems like, outside appearances is your first impression on stuff, and it just seems like there's like zero remorse there.
No. And he's claiming self-defense, which is complete baloney. I mean, if you see the testimony of the cop who was at the scene, the cop at the school who was at the scene, witnesses told him that, Austin Metcalf told Carmelo, hey, you are in the wrong tent. This is our school's tent. Your school's tent is over there. And he proceeded to say, touch me and see what happens. And then after just, a simple back and forth, apparently Austin Metcalf literally just puts his hand on his shoulder to say, hey, man, you're in the wrong tent, and gets stabbed in the heart. Tell me how that is self-defense. He didn't, Austin Metcalf didn't try to fight him. He didn't, Carmelo Anthony wasn't in fear of his life. It was which, by the way, why do you have a knife at a high school track event anyways in the first place? That just kind of seems like inappropriate in the first place. But anyways, there's the argument for self-defense here is complete nonsense, because no witnesses have claimed that Carmelo was in a dangerous situation. It was, it seems like he was deliberately sitting in that tent, and because his standoffness, where he was saying, "Touch me, see what happens." Like, it almost seemed like he was looking for a confrontation. I don't know that for sure, but if you're going to, say, "Touch me, see what happens," it seems like he was almost looking for a fight or something. And it's bottom line is the fact that Carmelo Anthony is being put as the victim in this story, where if it were the other way around, if, say, Austin Metcalf stabbed Carmelo Anthony, oh my goodness, Austin Metcalf and his whole family would have to have like Secret Service protection. Like the roles would be completely reversed. I mean, he would be put under the jail. He would already be, convicted in the court of public opinion. Exactly.
For certain.
Like,
for certain.
He would be dead and buried in that realm. And so we see the roles being reversed, and Carmelo Anthony is being flaunted like this harmless celebrity, and we see free Carmelo posters, and it's sick. And I don't have to imagine if the shoes were on the other foot, because look what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse. That situation was, he was being attacked, and it was actual self-defense. But meanwhile, Kyle Rittenhouse still has, that on his name of people thinking about him a certain way. And now we see this situation. Carmelo Anthony is being flaunted as a celebrity. I really, really hope that this does not influence the case at all, and he gets a freebie on this. It's just sick, in my opinion. I don't understand how anybody can look at that and think that that's okay. That kid stabs somebody, murders them, and now he gets rewarded with a mansion and cars. I don't get that. I don't get that at all, Emily. I just don't understand it.
I mean, it's mind-boggling to me, and I don't like. What I can't wrap my head around is the amount of money that poured in before knowing all of the facts of the case. This money just poured in. And then it's not just to keep it real simple, it's not a good look. It's not a good look to be involved in the murder of a young man, and then to turn around and buy a car, rent or buy an obscenely expensive property. Now, and I'm just trying to think of both sides here for as arguments come in and things like that. The only thing I can think of is if his family, in regards to the home, is if his family felt threatened or overwhelmed from media exposure or anything like that, that they felt that they would be better off or safer in a gated community. That's the only way that my brain can process them going into a more expensive or out of their known budget dwelling.
And even if that was,
because they're looking for privacy and safety.
If that even was the case, a $900,000 house seems a bit overboard, like,
yeah.
It seems a bit over the top. And
what a bad look for the whole thing, though, whole thing. And what is it like? It feels like my gut feeling on this, with just how quickly that situation escalated in the tent to the level that it escalated, makes me feel like there are things that may have happened in this boy's past that he never suffered any consequences for his actions, and there was always someone there to catch him, bail him out, catch him before he falls, bail him out before anything gets bad. He's never... Dale, just to paraphrase Dale thinks everybody should be punched in the face once.
I would agree with that.
So they know the consequences of running their mouth, or they know the consequences of their actions and things like that. Like it's a very fast way to explain something Dale has said before. But when you never, ever are allowed to fail and pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and go on about your life, then you come to expect someone to be there to fix things for you and bail you out of bad situations. And if you do something wrong, it's not a big deal because someone's going to take care of it for you.
Yeah.
And I feel like this has been this young man's life. Could be totally wrong. Could be totally wrong. I cannot say with any kind of authority, but it just seems to be my gut reaction to this story, to everything that we know so far, and to the very bad look of let's buy new cars and get a fancy pants house. That's what my gut's telling me.
Well, so the attorney for Carmelo Anthony, by the way, is Dominique Alexander, which he is the president of NGAN, which I'm trying to look up right now what NGAN even is. Emily, do you have any idea what NGAN is?
No, but I'll hit the old Google machine.
I'm trying to. So Minister Dominique Alexander is his lawyer, and he's kind of leading the charge in the victim mentality of Carmelo Anthony. Obviously, I mean it's his job, I guess, if he's trying to get the best case for Carmelo Anthony, I guess. But today. So apparently the father of Austin Metcalf, the kid who was murdered by Carmelo Anthony, attended the press conference today regarding Carmelo Anthony, I guess where Dominique Alexander was having a press conference for his client. But Dominique Alexander, the attorney, said that it was disrespectful for Austin Metcalf's father to attend Carmelo's press conference. What's really disrespectful is his son going to a high school track event and then getting stabbed in the heart. That's what's really disrespectful of this whole thing. And he's acting like, how dare he show up to this press conference? That is extremely disrespectful. Are you serious? Like, first of all, his dad, Austin Metcalf's dad, even got heat because right after his son was murdered, he said that he didn't want this to turn into a politicized thing. Like, he almost was, he didn't say it, but it seemed like he was eventually ready to forgive Carmelo Anthony for what he did, which I can't even imagine if I was in that situation that happened to my son. So if anything, his dad is not wanting this to be a divisive matter. And so just him showing up to the press conference is being disrespectful. How dare Dominique Alexander say that? Like, seriously, like his father deserves to be at whatever event he wants to in regards to the murder of his son. Like
NGAN is the Next Generation Action Network. Dominique Alexander is the founder of Next Generation Action Network.
Next Generation Action Network.
Yeah, you can dive more into that if you would like.
Interesting. I'm going to have to look into that in the break. Well, speaking of a break, we got to take one right now. This is JP and Emily here on Rightside Radio, filling in for Phil Williams. 833-687-4448 is the text line number. Let us know y'all's thoughts, and we're going to take a quick time out, but we'll be right back. And we are back. This is JP here, filling in for Phil here on Rightside Radio, where it's always solid conservative and just plain right. Phil today had a great opportunity to go on the Flyover Conservatives podcast. So if any of y'all out there are Flyover Conservative fans, keep an eye out. We'll see an episode with Phil Williams coming up in the future. So Phil will be back tomorrow, but I thought that was a great opportunity to go on there with them today. So he just wrapped that up. It apparently went really well. So y'all check out that episode when it comes out. But like I said, tomorrow Phil will be back. In the meantime, here's some texts y'all texted in regarding the Carmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf horrible tragedy, where unfortunately we're seeing Carmelo Anthony, his family, getting tons of money, new mansion, new cars, and all this. Is almost like he's being rewarded for murdering Austin Metcalf, which is extremely sick and twisted. But Jeremy from Madison, no, this is in regards to NPR. So you can't get rid of National Public Radio. That's how I found all the left's lies. Well,
there you go.
Let me tell you, there's a plethora of places you can find the left's lies. So it's not NPR exclusive. Michael from Madison texted in, said it's horrible that this kid murdered another kid, but what the family has done by gaining money and buying all this stuff is setting up a horrible precedent where other people and families are going to follow suit to get money. I'm really worried about that. Yeah, it's an ugly and scary precedent that I mean, I would say it looks like it, but it don't even look like it. It simply is a matter of fact. His family is profiting off of their son murdering another kid. Like that's what's happening. And they're trying to turn him into a victim. And listen, like I said last segment, there's a part of me that I can understand why his lawyer would be doing that. He's trying to sway the jury, trying to portray him as a victim. And, in the court of public opinion, if Carmelo Anthony can be turned into the victim who was sticking up against this white kid who apparently went to try and jump him, which is nonsense, then that would help, sway the jury and help him win the case. But there's no excuse for $850,000 to be pouring into a GoFundMe.
Oh, my land.
Simply because Carmelo Anthony murdered somebody. And there was no evidence at all. No reason to think that this was justified killing, self-defense. Actually, evidence shows that it was not. I mean, Austin Metcalf was killed in cold blood is what happened. But yet, because a lot of people saw it as a black kid sticking up to a white kid, they thought it was a justified killing, and so they're going to send him money. And that's simply what happened, because you see these protests and T-shirts. There's T-shirts being sold by his family, by the way. T-shirts about Carmelo Anthony, his face on the T-shirts. They're profiting off of their son being a murderer, and that's not a good precedent to set. So I agree with you, Michael from Madison. It's disgusting and twisted. And Shane from Madison is asking if I've seen the T-shirts they're selling. Yes, I have, and it's a mess. Carmelo Anthony, it seems to be an example of criminal justice instead of victim justice, says JT from Lacey Springs. I agree with that. It's just, and like I said, I hate for it to be a race thing, but they're making it into a race thing because their whole narrative is the white kid tried to jump the black kid, therefore the black kid is in the right. Is the narrative? That's why $850,000 are pouring in. And picture, and I hate to play this game, but it's a matter of truth. Picture if the roles were reversed, it would be completely different, right? So it's a mess, and I don't know how we got to this point where, kids are being lauded as celebrities there's a part of me that expected it, but $850,000, Emily, is an absurd amount of money.
It is an absurd amount of money, and I'll tell you, I feel like how we've gotten here in society is we've become a godless society. There's no, there's nobody, I shouldn't say nobody. The respect for human life has been deteriorating over the decades. The removal of God from society, I think, is why we see more and more of this stuff happening, because I feel like when you don't value life, you have things like FSU, you have things like Carmelo Anthony. When you don't have God and you don't know that your identity as a child of God and all of that stuff, you get situations where you're easily led to believe that because you feel masculine one day, that instead of just being a tomboy, you're a man.
Yeah.
And that God got it wrong. God doesn't get it wrong. God doesn't make mistakes. And so the more that God has been removed from society, belittled, mocked, and made fun of, the more and more problems we seem to see.
Mm.
That's my perspective. It's something that bothers me a lot.
And I agree with you completely. And by the way, speaking of the Florida State situation, we're still following that situation of the active shooter incident.
Did you see the latest there, JP?
I did not. What's the latest?
The latest is 2 dead. It was a son. It says the son of, suspected FSU shooter is a 20-year-old student and son of a Leon County Sheriff's deputy. He used one of her guns. 2 dead, not students, 5 injured.
Oof.
Is the latest. That's coming from CBS 42 in Birmingham.
Horribly sad stuff. Y'all, prayers for the victims at FSU, and we're going to be following that story throughout the show and continue discussing it as well. But in the meantime, we're going to take a quick time out, and we're going to come back on the other side. This is JP and Emily filling in for Phil here on Rightside Radio. We'll be right back.
listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. This is JP here, filling in for Phil Williams, live in the Rightside studios. And man, we're here covering the local, the state, the national, sometimes the international. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, folks, Phil today had an opportunity to go on the Flyover Conservatives podcast, which I don't know if any Flyover Conservative fans are out there, but that is why he is not on the show today. But he will be here back tomorrow. But if any of y'all are Flyover Conservative fans out there, keep an eye out for Phil and an episode coming up with them. I heard today went great, so hopefully it was a good episode, but he'll be back tomorrow. In the meantime, you got me and Emily Hayes filling in for Phil. I always find it funny when I'm saying I'm filling in for Phil.
Filling in for Phil.
Filling in for Phil. But we appreciate y'all listening. We had some texts that came in. Jeff from Chattanooga, first-time texter. What's going on, Jeff? Appreciate you listening. Said, thank you for being brave enough to speak about the truth of this reverse racism. And okay to punish white people is just wrong. Racism in any direction is wrong. I agree with you, Jeff. And it is a topic that is scary to talk about in the public realm because you get ostracized and you get deemed as racist. You get the isms come out and the ists words come out and you get attacked no matter what side you're on. So it is a very divisive topic. However, I think that means it needs to be discussed even more because it's going to scare.
Uncomfortable conversations have to happen if there's ever going to be any change. The uncomfortable conversation has to happen.
And like I said, that is why you have to talk about it even more. You have to shed light on the issue because if you don't and you let fear drive you and you're not going to discuss topics just because they're uncomfortable, then nothing's going to get any better and nothing's going to get resolved. So this is stuff that has to get called out, and Carmelo Anthony's money or family making that much money and buying a mansion and cars is not okay when their son just murdered somebody in cold blood. No matter how you look at it, it's just not okay. Dave from Capshaw texted in talking about our earlier topic, talking about PBS and NPR. He said, as of recent estimates, Sesame Works Street, the nonprofit behind Sesame Street, is valued at approximately $1 billion. They bring in about $50 million a year. Other programs make lots of money selling stuff as well. Let them all fund PBS themselves.
Well, that's one thing that we haven't really taken a deep dive on, and I don't have any numbers in front of me because this just kind of started the wheel going. But you think about all those shows that have licensing agreements for their characters and the things that get made from that, like all the toys, all the licensed figures on shirts and things like that, where they bring in more money. So that's a really good point, Dave. Yeah, and
let them compete in the private realm. I mean, if they're going to be woke, I agree with what Congressman Strong said, then we shouldn't be funding it, and our taxpayers shouldn't be funding it. Go and donate yourself if you want, but we shouldn't be funding that nonsense. It's crazy, and I mentioned this earlier, but I'm seeing these shows and these characters that I used to love watching growing up, and the creators are having epiphanies that all of a sudden they're gay. All of a sudden, I've seen something too about people trying to claim that SpongeBob is asexual and gay too. It's like, what? Why can't kids shows just be kids shows? Why does the characters have to be lesbian, non-binary, gay, transgender?
Why can't they just be a sponge in the bottom of the sea
who lives in a pineapple? It's not that serious.
Like it doesn't have to be that deep. Like we don't have to define everything for everybody. It can just be silly nonsense. That's what it should be.
It's a kid show.
It should be silly nonsense that's an escape.
Mm-hmm.
Golly.
It doesn't have to have any sort of bias interjected into it. It's so if this, I think it was $1.1 billion that Director Vought of the Trump administration directed to be cut from the NPR and PBS. If that happens, hopefully it can go back to what it used to be, and it could be a great resource for kids to watch and have fun and not have to be indoctrinated or have to feel like there's a message being shoved down their throat, and parents can actually feel safe that they're watching certain shows. So hopefully that this is a wake-up call for them if it does come to fruition here. By the way, folks, on the topic earlier, we were talking about the Carmelo Anthony situation. I'm just seeing on Twitter right now a picture of Carmelo Anthony standing next to a cousin of his or a family member of his or something with a free Melo shirt. It's just gross, man. I hate this celebrity nonsense, and I hate him being flaunted as a celebrity for murdering somebody. It's a mess. And also, folks, update on the Florida State incident. There was a active shooter earlier today. I think Emily mentioned this earlier, but police have confirmed 2 dead and 5 injured in the shooting down at Florida State. So prayers out to the victims and their families, and prayers to anybody, any victim that is currently trying to survive right now. After being shot from this incident, prayers to them and the fast recovery, and that they're able to come through on the other side okay. It's just
and let's also say a prayer for those first responders, because the interview I heard with one of the kids at FSU was that his words were the cops were there instantly. And we have sadly had to experience situations where those who have sworn to serve and protect hesitated to go into these situations. So, that student spoke with relief knowing that the police were there, and knowing that the police were there that quickly to minimize any further damage. So let's keep those guys in your thoughts and prayers as well, and because what a hard situation for them to go into as well. Yeah, and props to the police. I've seen nothing but good things about how quickly they responded and were able to get in and neutralize the threat. So props out to the Florida State Police Department, and prayers to any. I don't know if I've seen anything about any police officers that were injured from this, but if there are, then prayers to them as well. But we're gonna keep following this story and updating y'all as we go. We had another text in from Matt from Madison. He said, "Don't forget public broadcasting annual begging. When they beg for donations, all the while receiving our tax dollars and the outside revenue. Yeah, it's never enough. It's never enough money. Obviously, it's greed." I think they could survive on their own without the funding from the federal government. But of course, they're gonna phrase that as they can't survive without the federal funding. Obviously, they can. They're successful, and if they're, I think there's some properties that can, like that point that was made about Sesame Street and all the money that comes from that. All we have to do is go back to your childhood, JP, and think about Tickle Me Elmo and how crazy that was at Christmas for people.
Oh, yes.
And that is a Sesame Street property. That is a Sesame Street character. So however that money is broken down and distributed for their licensing agreements, for their character agreements and things like that, there are some shows that don't need funding. And I think maybe Sesame Street's one of those that would be classified as a standalone show that doesn't need funding. But then, Julie Tabuli's Kitchen, she's going to need some funding. Yeah. And if they have to compete in the private realm, then they're going to have to it's almost like they have a safety net with the public funding that they can say all the woke stuff that they want, and even if people don't watch it, it doesn't matter. They're going to make money anyways. If they have to actually compete and people don't want to watch it and don't want to watch that crap, maybe they realize, oh, people don't like this, and we're going to have to get away from this because we have to actually make money now on our own. So maybe, it end up being a good thing and get all that out of the PBS and Sesame Street and all of the good shows that were once very good and have unfortunately had that stuff injected into them. But John from Huntsville texted in, by the way, said, "I would love to see Emily on PBS hosting her own cooking show called What's Cooking with Emily, where every dish she cooks is something Dale Jackson hates. And at the end of the show, I, John Paul from Huntsville, grade her food by using my famous John Paul from Huntsville grading scale." Listen, that's certainly an idea. I do love John Paul's enthusiasm, but anybody that listens to the Dale Jackson show knows that I talk often about how I married up, and Dale will also echo that my husband deserves better than me. Husband has taken over the majority of the cooking in the household. So from time to time, I make family favorites that are just, my mom's recipes, my grandma's recipes, and things like that. But as far as being the cook, the chef of the household, that's my husband, because I don't have the patience to follow directions and be precise with measurements. I don't bake very well. I try very hard. I'm hosting an Easter tea on Saturday at my house, and I'm very excited about it. I've got all the things laid out that I want to do and stuff. I can do things like that. But man, when it comes to just like everyday, regular old cooking, I'm good with casseroles. I can. Oh gosh, I can't bake. Let's be honest. I really, and the more and more I say these things out loud, as I'm in my 6th year of marriage, I do wonder why my husband married me. I made a mistake one time when we were dating, and he was like, "This is amazing. This is the best steak I've ever had." You know. So maybe that one time I made a steak.
You made him think you were a great
yeah,
cook. Yeah,
like gotcha.
Yeah, maybe that would make the show even more interesting, though, if you just, the whole show was you, like, burning food and having to use the fire extinguisher. Yeah,
I made some very beautiful chocolate cookies one time as a teenager when I was volunteering for VBS at our church. And I had I had a group of like 5th graders, and we were making these chocolate cookies, and I was letting them help with stuff. And I don't know if I said the wrong measurement for salt or if someone told me the wrong measurement from salt, but it didn't faze me that I was putting a lot of salt into these cookies, and we baked them, and man, like visually the most beautiful chocolate cookies you've ever seen. Just so great. Took a bite of one, and all you wanted to do was put your mouth under the faucet, the spigot, and just let water run all through you, because it probably had the salt content of the Dead Sea. It was absolutely awful. But they were beautiful, but they were gross. And I learned my limitations then, and have tried to play to my strengths throughout my professional career. And it is not cooking. Roll Tide.
It's not cooking. Well, at least you married somebody that can cook. So
yes,
thankful
God
for
bless
that
him.
on this Thankful Thursday. Well, we're going to take a quick time out. We're going to be back on the other side here. JP and Emily Hayes filling in for Phil here on Rightside Radio, where it's always solid, conservative, and just plain right. We'll be right back on the other side. And we are back. This is JP here, filling in for Phil here on Rightside Radio, where it's always solid, conservative, and just plain right. Here with Emily Hayes from the Dale Jackson Show up on WVNN out of Huntsville from 5 to 9 a.m. every single weekday. By the way, folks, Phil got a great chance to go on the Flyover Conservatives podcast today. So if there's any Flyover Conservative fans out there, keep an eye out for Phil in the future going on that podcast, but that is why he was not here today. But he'll be back tomorrow, so make sure to stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we got a caller on the line. Kareem from Huntsville is calling in. Kareem, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing there, JP?
I do good.
Listen, I think the whole situation with this Carmelo guy is, and why people are rallying around him, is because you have to think about history, not even long history, short history. We're talking about Breonna Taylor. We're talking about the last guy. What was his name that got killed by police? Or
George Floyd.
George Zimmerman. That's like Trayvon Martin. You know exactly. Kyle Rittenhouse. Kyle Rittenhouse got millions of dollars, from the right wing when he was out there and he was accused of murdering people. He never was held accountable for it. So I guess as the black community, we're looking at this young guy like, okay, he has a chance. If he did it, he should go to jail. Absolutely. I totally agree. I got sons too. But if there's a chance that he was actually defending himself, he don't need to sit in jail while he fight that battle. Too many times we always have to sit in jail because you don't have the bail money. So we just can't get pardons and stuff like that. So you got to sit in jail and fight your case from inside the jail with a court-appointed lawyer or whatever. So people are saying, okay, we're not just going to throw him to the wolves. It's especially after 2025 when we see everything everybody got away with, the things they was doing, how people are taking the narrative and turning it around, making right wrong and wrong right, up down, sideways is left way. Nothing is like it's supposed to be right now.
So
we've never had a.
Are you for? So I assume, Kareem, you're not for Carmelo Anthony being flaunted like a celebrity and T-shirts being made out of him. And
of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not. But you got to understand, Kyle Rittenhouse had the same thing. The cop that shot Breonna Taylor, George Zimmerman, got book deals and stuff like that. He was selling the actual gun that he shot and killed that boy with. You see, and nobody will say that. I think it's a lack of self-awareness. You can't say that's good that happened, for them. And then when this situation happened, and black folks is like, no, we're not going to let you have them like that. Not that easy. Especially after 2025 when we've seen all the charges that our dear president was facing, and he's the only man in the world to ever just walk away, regardless of what the charge was. It's not even about him right now. But when people see that, you say, okay, enough is enough. That's why you don't see right now with all the protesting and everything going on against you. And black folks are saying right now, we're not going to protest, we're not going to fight, because we're always the ones on the front line. When we got out there on the front line, that's when the police come out with the billy clubs and they start macing you and locking people up. So if the Hispanics want their civil rights, they're going to have to fight for it. You have 61% of Hispanics that voted for this guy. And a lot of them didn't know he was going to flip the script on them and start locking them up and sending them away too. They got to fight for their own rights. The people who voted for them and now they wish they didn't, they're going to have to stand up and fight. Because right now, we're just sitting back and looking.
So, and
you understand, these are the things that we told you so. This is kind of things. And then when stuff like Carmelo happened, okay, that's why people sending him money. So he's not going to let it be the same thing.
I actually think you're right that that's the reason. Although I disagree with that it's happening, and I know I don't think for a second that you, Kareem, are for murders being flaunted like celebrities like it is, and the bottom line
never
is
have been.
Yeah, I guess the bottom line of what I'm trying to argue is that it's not right that in cold blood Austin Metcalf was murdered, and the evidence we have so far is that it was not self-defense, and all of that will be argued out in court, obviously. But I don't think it's right just because the initial gut reaction is to send money, and while Austin Metcalf's family is mourning their son who got murdered
that's
during
never
cars.
happened before. This is what I'm saying. That's never happened before. Nobody sent a whole bunch of money to Trayvon family. Nobody sent a whole bunch of money to Breonna Taylor family. None of that. And these was the actual victims of the crime. But what you did here, you hear demonizing of them. Oh, she was a drug dealer, or her boyfriend was a drug dealer. Trayvon, oh, he smoked weed in high school. Good thing this boy don't have any of that. He don't have any of that people can look back at his past and somehow justify trying to hang him. You understand?
Mm-hmm. Well, Kareem, we got about 5 seconds before the music starts, so unfortunately we're going to have to leave it there.
Yeah, I mean, just, All right.
All right, bro. See you.
Gotcha.
All right, well, we are going to take a quick time out. That is the music playing. We got to head to the break. But 833-687-4448 is the text line and call line numbers. Let us know your thoughts. But me and Emily Hayes will be back on the other side. And this is JP and Emily filling in for Phil today here on Rightside Radio. We'll be right back.
Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right.
And we're back. This is JP here on Rightside Radio, filling in for Phil Williams today, where it's always solid conservative and just plain right. Got Emily Hayes here with me as well from the Dale Jackson Show. You can hear her every single weekday from 5 to 9 a.m. out of WVNN, out of Huntsville. But we got a caller on the line. It's our favorite truck driving friend, Jeff Froh from Indiana. Jeff Froh, what's going on, man?
Stuck in traffic about 20 miles south of Nashville, so it's a normal day.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's par for the course, it seems like.
Yes, it is. It's too par, I think. That's the trouble.
It's just too normal, I guess. Yeah. Well, at least, you have you have a load today, and you weren't sitting there for hours. At least you won't be getting home too late tonight.
No, and I'm off till Monday, thank goodness.
Thank the Lord for that. Well, what do you tell me what's on your mind? What we've been talking about today.
Well, you're talking about this stabbing and this kid and everything.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that. Kareem said this guy got no record and everything and stuff, but I can't imagine that. The first thing you ever got in trouble for was stabbing someone through the heart.
Yeah.
That just don't compute. You have a knife with you when you're not supposed to especially at a high school, track meet or whatever. I'm sure that the knives, any kind of weapons are banned.
Yeah.
And you're carrying that with you. And I would also like to know the track record of the kid he killed, and everything, just to kind of, was he a troublemaker or not? And, I don't know much about his background as well.
Well, the weird thing about this is that I think all that's known from both of them. I think both of them were actually like captains of their football teams. I think both of them didn't have much of a record. Now, all of this is going to come out, in court. But the bottom line, I don't think that was necessarily an endorsement of what was going on from Kareem in terms of his family getting money. I think what he was saying about the black community feeling that certain way, I think that's right, although it's wrong and that shouldn't be happening. I think that is the mindset that they have, and it's unfortunate that that's the way, that it's so divisive. Then murderers' families get rewarded for it. But, I mean, that's just unfortunately where we're at. The gut reaction is that he is the victim in this, where no signs are pointing to Carmelo Anthony being the victim. I mean, he took somebody's life in cold blood, and he should be prosecuted for that. He shouldn't be rewarded for that.
Right. And normally it would, be, money given to the victim's family, as trying, for burial expenses and everything else and the loss of their son.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if they're getting any money or not. Have they had a GoFundMe started for them or not? But yeah,
they should.
Yeah, they really should. I mean, they've lost a son, and being especially of a twin, you got to imagine the closeness that his brother is feeling and the feeling of the loss.
Yeah,
someone you growed up from birth with.
Yeah, and that's unfortunate. Apparently, his brother was right there when he passed away as well. So it's just a completely, really tragic, sad situation. But it's disrespectful to the victim's family that the kid who took his life is now being flaunted like a celebrity, and shirts are being made out of him, and they're in a mansion. It's like it portrays from people that they're okay with their son being killed. And it's awful. It should never happen. Hopefully, though, Carmelo does, if it does, which also, like I said, all signs right now from when the cop was at the scene pointed to it was not self-defense. So if that is the case and he should be prosecuted, I hope that he does get prosecuted and justice is served in this situation.
It just goes to show you the kind of degradation that the United States has gone through, and everything, 50 years ago, this would not, have happened as far as the victim's family and the perpetrator's family. It blows my mind that people have this kind of mindset. That's very basically all I've got to say
Yeah,
about it.
it's unfortunate, but talking about it is the only way to fix it, I think. If everybody's scared to talk about it, then nothing's going to get fixed. So, well, Jeff, I appreciate you calling in, man, and hope you enjoy your weekend off, your long weekend off, and stay safe the rest of the way. Get home safe.
I will. I got a whole bunch of garbage in the yard from the Ohio River coming up.
Oh, yeah.
Come help me clean. You can come help me clean up this weekend if you'd like.
Shoot. Is everything okay with that? Did the flood get up into your garage at all?
It got within a foot.
Oh.
It was a foot below what was going to get into it, so I got lucky.
Yeah, well, this at least I guess picking up trash is a fair trade-off for that instead of your garage being flooded. I'd take that any day.
Oh yeah. Well, you all have a good one. You're doing a great job.
Appreciate you, man. Stay safe. All right, Emily. I have an idea.
What's your idea?
Let's end the show on this Thankful Thursday to lighten the mood. Talk about stuff we're thankful about because it is Thankful Thursday, and the topic we were just talking about it is a rough topic. So let's end the show talking about something we're thankful about.
I like it.
How about you go first, Emily? Tell me on this Thankful Thursday what you're thankful about right now.
Well, I'm going to go here with the obvious, JP. I'm
Yeah.
thankful that it's Holy Week. I'm thankful for, the resurrection coming on Sunday and the ability to celebrate that. I've worked for people where I've not felt comfortable asking off for daytime church services, and it's not that they would have told me no because legally they have to. I believe the HR law or whatever is like if it doesn't come to a detriment, like it's a detriment to the company or whatever, if you're not there to go to a service or whatever. But this is the first time in the first time in my professional career where I felt comfortable saying, hey, look, Monday, Thursday service is at 8:15 this morning, Thursday morning. Do you mind if I take off the last hour of the show? And Dale was like, no, it's fine. Go ahead. And then tomorrow we have Good Friday service. We have 2 Good Friday services at our church. One's at 10:30 and one's at 6, so it doesn't really interfere with our show in the morning. But I'm thankful that I have the freedom and the ability to be able to worship in the way and style that I would like to. And I'm thankful for, the sacrifice that was made for me to not have to conquer death, that the Lord conquered that and has set us free from that. The wages of sin is death. And how blessed are we and how thankful should we be that we don't have to suffer that.
Yeah.
And that we have the way to eternal life.
Yeah, and it's
so top that, JP.
Ditto. And we're gonna move on. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, all that I agree with completely. And I'm gonna stay on that same thread. Is I'm thankful for all of that, and then that we have an administration in the White House that is willing to openly acknowledge that. It seemed like for 4 years, with Biden declaring Easter Day. When he was in office, Transgender Day of Visibility, clearly, nobody can convince me that was not a shot at the Christian community, even if it wasn't for Biden himself. Somebody in the Biden administration wanted to get on their high horse and do that. And it was sad that we had somebody in the White House that was, Joe Biden can claim to be a Catholic all he wants, but actions speak louder than words, and that administration did not lead a godly administration. And so I am happy that President Trump's administration is willing to openly express their Christian faith, but then also give Holy Week the attention it deserves. And having specific events, special events for Holy Week throughout the week. We saw some last night taking place. There's going to be some for Good Friday tomorrow, and then obviously Easter weekend. So I'm glad that we got somebody leading the country, and an administration leading the country that prays before meetings, prays before they talk to the press. God, it seems to be back in the White House, and it's refreshing to see that their decision making is being driven by their faith, and it's a comeback that I've very much welcomed and very much thankful for on this Thankful Thursday. So I'm glad that Holy Week is getting the recognition and the attention it deserves from the guy that's leading our nation and the administration that's leading our nation. And like I said in my monologue, that this country was built by Christians. Like, the Christian faith is what drove this nation to be what it is. And it's from folks like George Washington and all the founding fathers. They actively, exercised their faith, and God, I believe, blessed them to do what they did and establish this nation. So it's only right for this country to be, acknowledge that, and to continue to express our faith in God, because without God, America would not be where it is today. And so the foundation of this nation is a Christian faith. So I'm glad that faith is back in the White House once again after 4 years. It gives me a special appreciation, though, that after seeing the attack on Christianity with Transgender Days of Visibility on Easter Day, what a coincidence. After seeing all that, it makes me appreciate more this administration that comes in and acknowledges, Holy Week and Easter weekend. So that is what I am thankful for on this Holy Week. Y'all text in, let us know, what are you thankful for? Call in, too. I will not be able to answer calls while I'm doing this right now because inside baseball, I'm having to produce and do the show. So if you want to call in during the break, though, we'll greatly take your call, 833-687-4448. We're going to end this Thankful Thursday on a thankful note with Holy Week, and we're going to take a quick time out, and on the other side, continue to do just that. So let us know what you're thankful for. And this is JP and Emily Hayes filling in for Phil today. We'll be right back on the other side. And we are back. This is JP here, filling in for Phil on Rightside Radio, where it's always solid, conservative, and just plain right. Here with Emily Hayes from the Dale Jackson Show. You can find her every weekday morning on 5 to 9 a.m. on WVNN out of Huntsville. And by the way, folks, Phil was able to go on the conservative talk show, or the conservative podcast, I should say, Flyover Conservatives today, which is why he was not here today. He will be back tomorrow, though. But if any Flyover Conservative fans are out there, keep an eye out for Phil on an upcoming episode with them. But great opportunity. Thankful for that. But he'll be back tomorrow, so don't worry about that. Had some texts that came in. Adam from Athens said, "Great show, y'all. Appreciate you." He said, "I guess we'll let you fill in next time Phil is out." Well, Adam,
Oh, how kind.
I appreciate that. And now that Adam gave the okay approval, I have to let Phil know that. Matt from Madison said, "Hey JP, do you get paid more when you fill in? If not, you should." Nah, I don't. I do not, man. I appreciate that comment, but I do not. I have to work double here as producer and co-host here with Emily, but no pay increase, unfortunately. John from Huntsville texted in and said, "JP gets an A double plus for his magnificent performance." Thank you, John. He said, "However, today's winner is obviously the wonderful Emily Hayes with a perfect A triple plus because I decided to not deduct any points from her grade for saying Roll Tide because she made the show a lot more happier than Dale Jackson would have made it. Congratulations, and I'm thankful that there's great people like Emily in this sometimes dark world."
That's
Well, there
very
you go.
sweet. Thank you.
You know, I have to say, though, John, Emily, that may be a sweet text, but he's spelling your last name wrong. He's spelling it Haze instead of Hayes. So maybe John gets a deduction for misspelling Emily Hayes'
it's
last
okay.
name there. Yeah.
I'll let it slide because I'll tell you, John Paul, that in high school, I had a nickname and it was Purple Haze since my last name was Hayes, Hayes. So he's not, but obviously Jimi Hendrix, Purple Haze, Haze.
Mm-hmm.
So the intent is right. So I'll allow it.
Purple Haze, and I Prince was before my time. I can't say I've listened to much Prince. I mean, obviously when he died, I heard a lot of.
Well, that's Purple Rain.
Purple Rain, yeah.
Yeah, Purple Rain, Purple Haze, two totally different things. And you should listen to Prince because he is a very underrated guitarist. I've
heard his stuff when he passed away. I heard a lot of his music, but I've not listened to a lot of Prince in my free time. I've heard though that Prince had one of the greatest Super Bowl halftime performances
the greatest Super Bowl halftime show, the greatest
in
the rain, brilliant.
Yeah, they don't make them like that no more. I guess. All right, they don't make Super Bowl halftime shows like that anymore. I guess. Well, folks, it is Thankful Thursday. We are thankful for all of y'all for tuning in and listening today. Like I said, Phil will be back tomorrow, and I know we are always very thankful for y'all and the Rightside ruffians out there that show y'all support day in and day out. But like I said, it is Holy Week, and there's a lot to be thankful for this week. And if you don't have something that you're thankful for, then I guess you're not looking hard enough for that. So I think this is a great day on this Thankful Thursday to reminisce on that. I know me and Emily just did that a couple of segments ago, but it is always a good day to try to find something to be thankful for, and Holy Week is just another great excuse to do that. But even though, with the news, and it's a lot of the, even from both sides of the aisle, the news can get very heavy and makes you think that there's not much good going on, but that's not the case. And I would encourage y'all to touch grass because I think that's important to do. That's important to do, is to just get away from all of that every once in a while. And I know, for one, I'm someone that's very inundated with all of that because, it's my job, but I have to remind myself to unplug from it every now and then, because if you don't, then you start to go crazy a little bit. You
have to get grounded again to be able to stomach all this news and the 24-hour news cycle. And then if you're in media, you're in radio, you're in television or journalism, it hits us from all angles everywhere, because if we don't see it on our social media, if it doesn't come to our email inbox, if it's not something that we see on television or read in a newspaper, someone is going to text us about it. Like somebody texted me about Senate Bill 322 that has to do with Smith Lake up here in Coleman County. And it was while I was in church. I didn't see it till I got out of church, but it's like we can't get away from it. And you have to be intentional about getting away from it, giving yourself some space to realize we're not all as bad as everybody wants us to believe we are. Your neighbor's not your enemy. And the only way you do that is when you step away from social media, when you step away from the television screen, from all screens, and do something in your neighborhood. Go outside, push your kid around on a swing, or in my case, go watch my 3-year-old aerate the ball field, because if she's not hitting the ball, she's playing in the dirt. But that's a good hour for us to disconnect from everything, watch Margot play, and then come home, have supper, and wind down for the night. And that's important. And if you're not doing something like that to get back to a baseline, then you should work that in.
I just say, that's smart because, for Margot's end, I think she's just realistic. If you're standing out there doing nothing, what's the point of sticking around doing nothing? You got to air at the field. You got to do something.
She's wearing these white baseball pants, and this dirt is red. And it wasn't last week. It was Monday. That Monday night they had a game. She got bored. She took her hat off. She started putting the dirt in her hat. And then the next thing I know, I hear my husband say, "Oh man, hat just went back on the head. All the dirt, all the dirt,
all the dirt."
Yeah, and so we had to scrub her scalp to get that dirt off of her head. But she's out there, she's trying, she's having a good time, and that's important.
Yeah, it's I grew up playing sports, and I can relate to the fact of it's not very fun standing out in the field doing nothing. You got to do something. So I guess aerating the field and then getting dirt all over your head is better than doing nothing. So I guess there's that. Well, we got about 30 seconds before the music hits. Like I said, once again, folks, Phil will be back tomorrow. Appreciate all of y'all tuning in today with me and Emily filling in. And I'm glad that y'all enjoyed the show today, and until next time. But folks, let me just say, it's always important to remember that there are more than us than there are of them. And you know what? I'm going to butcher it because I'm not Phil, but I'm going to do the best I can. There are always more of us than there are of them. God is still on his throne, and it's always important, folks, to remember to stay in the fight, always stay in the fight. And until tomorrow, we'll see you guys tomorrow.